Hi, have you ever reached a moment in your life when everything looked fine on the outside, but something inside you quietly whispered, there has to be more than this? Maybe you built a career, maybe you're raising a family, maybe you've done everything you were told you were supposed to do, and yet you wake up every morning with the same feeling. You're surviving, but you're not really living. Or maybe your story is different. Maybe you left the country where you were born. You packed your memories, your dreams, your fears, and everything familiar into a suitcase. You arrived in a new place hoping for opportunity, but somewhere along the journey, you started wondering. You started wondering, where do I belong now? You miss home, yet you've changed so much that home doesn't feel the same anymore. You try to fit into a new culture while desperately trying not to lose the one that raised you. You wonder if your children will understand your language, your traditions, your grandparents. You wonder if they will know where they come from. Or maybe you're watching this because you're simply tired. Tired of feeling stuck. Tired of waiting. Tired of believing your best years are already behind you. Maybe you've dreamed about changing careers, starting a business, going back to school, writing a book, creating something meaningful. But every time you get close, fear speaks louder than hope. It says, you're too old. You're too late. Someone else is already doing it better. You have too much to lose. Be realistic. And after hearing those voices for long enough, you begin to mistake them for the truth. But what if they're not? What if the biggest obstacle in your life is not your age, or your job, or your circumstances? What if it's just a story you've learned to believe? That question changed my life because I realized something. Most of us do not live according to reality. Two people can experience the exact same failure. One says, this proves I'll never succeed. The other says, this taught me something I couldn't have learned any other way. The event is the same, the perspective is different, and that perspective changes everything. That's why I created Perspectives with K. Not because I have all the answers, I don't, but because life is easy, it is not, and not because I want to motivate you for a few minutes before life returns to normal. I'm creating this channel because I believe education can change the way we see ourselves. And when we change the way we see ourselves, we begin changing the way we live. Every week we'll explore questions that many people carry silently. Why do we feel stuck? Why do we fear change even when we know we need it so much? Why do we stay in places we have outgrown? Why is it starting over so difficult? How do we raise children between two cultures without losing either? How do we rebuild after failure? How do we find hope when the future looks uncertain? How do we stop comparing ourselves to everyone else? What do we make decisions we won't regret? How do we make decisions we will not regret? And how do we become the people we know we're capable of becoming? These are not just psychological questions. These are human questions. And I believe every one of them deserves thoughtful, honest conversation. We'll explore some of the psychological perspectives, not to diagnose people, but to understand ourselves and our nature. We'll learn from research, books, history, stories, everyday life, and sometimes we will simply pause long enough to ask better questions because I've learned something through my own journey. Sometimes the greatest transformation doesn't happen because life suddenly becomes easier for you. Sometimes it just happens because we finally see our life differently. Perspective does not erase pain, but it changes what pain means. Perspective doesn't remove uncertainty, but it gives us courage to keep walking away anyway. Perspective does not guarantee success, but it reminds us that failure is rarely the end of the story. And hope is not just pretending everything will be okay. Hope is believing that today's chapter is not the final chapter. I know there are people watching this today, right now, and who feel alone. Maybe no one around you understands your dreams. Maybe you've spent years putting everyone else first. Maybe you're carrying grief no one sees. Maybe you're quietly wondering if it's too late to become the person you've always imagined. If that's you, I want you to hear this. I don't want your story. I don't know your story, but I know this. You are more than your worst mistake. You are more than your fear. You are more than your past. And your future is not written yet. One of my deepest beliefs is that goodness still exists. Not because life is always fair, not because suffering is not real, but because every day I see ordinary people choosing kindness, choosing courage, forgiveness, choosing to begin again. Those choices remind me that goodness is never completely absent. Sometimes it's simply hidden beneath disappointment, exhaustion, and fear. My hope is that this channel helps you find it again, not through empty encouragement, but through understanding, because understanding creates clarity, and clarity creates courage, and courage creates movement. So if you ever felt trapped between the life you're living and the life you know is possible, I welcome in you, and this is your place, not because we have perfect lives, but because we're willing to keep learning, keep questioning, keep growing, and keep beginning again. Every video on this channel is an invitation to think differently, to ask better questions, to challenge old assumptions, to rediscover hope, and to remember that another chapter is always possible. Thank you for trusting me with your time. I am so honored that you're here at the very beginning. If these conversations resonate with you, I would love for you to subscribe, join in this community. Together, we will explore ideas that help us think more clearly and live more intentionally, and move forward with courage. So, until next time, protect your hope, stay curious, and never stop believing that another chapter is possible. I'll see you in the next perspective.